What about now? How can it?
We don't use.
Oh, you don't use it.
They don't use much, but.
I mean, you can,
Uh-huh.
but you know, diesel's $3 a gallon.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
There's quite a
How,
difference.
how can you even come close?
And if you have enough water, you know, sprinklers, well, you can usually save yourself.
I noticed down here in the new vineyard that they planted, they've got wind machines set in different places. Did you use those many times for
Oh, yeah,
pears?
we still have wind machines in the orchard, yes. Aircraft engines, and some of them have some diesel and some ground power wind machines. We still use those.
Hello.
Hi, have you started?
Well, we just talked.
Talking.
Good, okay.
Come and have a seat.
Good.
A little coolish. I think I might get my sweater after all.
Well, go ahead, go get it.
You want me to bring your jacket?
You can, you bring it with me if you're going out, that'd be fine.
You're welcome. I'll contact you. Yes. Thanks.
That's funny.
Hi there. Hi there.
Pamela's hypothesis.
Stop trying to worry about it.
Get cold,
What's that?
you get cold,
It's all right. I'm good.
So later on today, Kristen, you're gonna go to school to work? Just
Heck no. I stayed, we had a minimum day yesterday and I stayed a little bit later just to get things done, make sure I was ready for after spring break.
Where do you teach?
Lower Lake,
What classes?
6th grade.
Sixth grade. My granddaughter goes to Lower Lake.
Oh, yeah?
She's a sophomore.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, you're chilly.
You're chilly she was pretty sick. She was feeling, I think, a little better, but just.
With us to talk about the pear industry.
That's what you're gonna say when he's ready?
How did it sound?
It sounded good.
So take it away, Skip, or your guests.
well, let's see. Why, she introduced me, so you know my name, Skip Rohner. Growing pears, 50 years ago compared to now. 50 years ago, we had 80,000 tons of pears that were produced in Lake County. Now we have less than 400,000, 40,000. There were about, I think, 75 to 100 growers. Now we have 12.
Wow.
We had about, I think there were 14 individual packing houses in Lake County at the time. There were 4 in Finley, I think. God Orchards, Annette Orchards, Lake Cove, and Pacific Fruit Growers. 4 packing houses right in Finley. Upper Lake had 3, Sealy, Rohner, and Matosa. And in Big Valley, we had Blue Anchor, Kelsey Mill Packing, and Mount Canocti Growers. Okay.
Did you say you wanted coffee, Pamela?
Oh, well, thank you.
We used to pick the pears 3 times. They'd size pick them. I didn't bring a ring, I should have. They have different size rings. When you first start picking, you pick the larger ones. And you used to pick them for 3 times. Get the bigger pears first and let the others grow for a while. The bigger pears you grow, the less time you have to pick them before they get ripe. You have to get them in the shed at a certain pressure. It takes a lot of water to make big pears. And the reason the stores like the big pears because it's less numbers that they have to deal with.
Do you get more money for the larger pears?
Yes?
Yeah.
Yes, we do.
But those who know pears would rather have a medium size
Yeah.
because they're better for eating.
I see.
Yeah.
But everybody wants big things. the stars and the people want big pears. They just don't know.
Years ago, they used to put straw under the trees and pick the culls and send them to the dry yard for dried pears.
And what do they do with them now when they're laying on the field?
Beg your pardon?
When we see pears laying on the field now, do they just leave them?
Generally,
There are some organic farmers that are able to do that, but we sell them to the market,
Oh, you do? You collect them and sell them?
not off of the ground.
No.
We pick nothing off.
Oh, okay.
We've got lots of pests to contend with. We used to just have a few major pests. Now we get pests coming from all over the world, especially Asia. You have to, if you plant an orchard, it takes from 7 to 10 years before you start to get any production. 15 years old is better. They hand prune all the orchards. We have done some topping with machines, but basically you prune every tree by hand. Use ladders. Years ago, they used wooden ladders, 15-foot wooden ladders. Now we use aluminum ladders, because 15-footers were really, really heavy.
Did the Stokes family make the wooden ones also?
Beg your pardon?
Were the ladders that
No,
were
they
made of wood?
bought, I don't recall who made those, but Stokes ladders, they're aluminum ladders.
They're, okay,
Yeah, that's.
yeah.
We have some trees, pear trees that are 150 years old
and still producing.
and still
Is that
producing, and I
right?
think they're on Carolyn's ranch. And there's some, I think, older than that.
Wow.
The Henderson Home Orchard was planted in 1891. Some original trees are still there.
That's where we live, on my family's, or the orchard in town.
Oh, okay.
Skip and I've only been married 30 years.
Newlyweds.
And that was after we had our families raised and
I see.
everything, so.
I see. Were you a Henderson?
Actually, I was a Merritt,
Oh, okay.
and I
They
married
had
a Henderson.
Okay.
They had pears also.
Yeah.
But that was the home ranch he's talking about, is the Henderson Home Ranch. And the Rohner Home Ranch was across the creek.
Oh, for goodness sakes.
But we were all friends.
Early days, we didn't have sprinkler irrigation. Everything was flood irrigation. And then they went to sprinkler pipes. That was the next. And then the next stage was pull hoses. They had hoses that they used, and finally you have permanent set now. Permanent set sprinklers. And pretty soon they'll probably transition to micro sprinklers.
Were those like drips?
Well, almost, yeah, but a little slower irrigated,
Oh, okay.
and not as much water at a time.
Have a seat.
Another chair.
They used to do a lot of disking for that flood irrigation. You had to have ridges to hold the water in. Now it's a no-till with the sprinkler system, basically. I used to have, if you wanted to test for moisture, you had an auger that you drilled down and took a sample every 4 feet down to 3 feet in the ground. And now you have sensors that you can check to find out when you need to put on irrigation. You have to pick the pears green. That's one of the fruits that you pick green. You test the fruit with a refractometer to get the sugar content. And then when it gets 13, you can start picking. You have to pass a certain amount of that sugar before they'll let you pick. And have that. Then you can put them in storage or at home and you can ripen them up that way. Pears you ripen after you pick them green. If you pick a ripe pear off the tree, they turn mushy and not very good.
Is the taste
They're all-
any different from picking it ripe and eating it right away?
Well, some people like to eat it green, like me, I eat it like an apple because it has enough sugar, but most people like, if you're gonna can them or anything, you eat them right. But most people like to eat them.
But I mean the ones that you pick ripe off the tree, do they taste any different from the ones that you
Oh,
ripen
yeah.
on the counter?
They're not good.
Oh, they're not.
I mean, they don't,
They don't have the sweetness and the flavor that they develop later.
I see.
And they have a weird texture.
When
yeah, that's it, it's a weird texture.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
They're all hand-picked.
Yeah.
Well-worn pickings.
In the early days, they picked them and put them in these boxes. So you had to hand do everything on the trucks. And
From
they-
the early days, who were the pickers?
oh, we
Anybody you
had-
could get.
Any kids? Yeah.
A lot of the people came from Oklahoma
Oh,
After
okay.
the Dust Bowl.
Okay.
That
after the Dust Bowl. And
helped the,
in those early days, that's the pickers we had. And I've had families with kids that stayed and came every year, the same bunch.
Yeah.
We had pretty good facilities at that time. Now mostly the Mexican, we have contractors that come in and do the job. They delivered pears to all the different packing houses, and then years ago, they had a station in Ukiah at the rail, where they took all the packed pears, and they shipped them back east by rail, refrigerated cars, well, ice bunkers, they aren't refrigerated like they are now. But all of the pears now are shipped by refrigerated trucks and they don't use the ice anymore. Just all basically, we don't send any rail anymore, all by trucks, go back east. And they send the pears all over to Mexico, Canada, and all over the United States.
Skip, where's the competition from? I know
Well,
that
for ours, yeah, it's in Sacramento Valley
they grow a lot of pears
and
over there.
Ukiah,
Uh-huh.
they grow pears too. But they've got their tonnage down also, but that's our competition, yeah.
So
I
they're,
think we raise better pears than they do.
Well, I see that advertised all the time, Lake County pears,
That's
so,
right,
yeah.
they're very good.
so are there just a lot less pears worldwide now? What's it?
Well, they're planting them in China too now.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine the demand is still there for pears, and people
Oh,
still
yeah.
love pears.
Australia,
Yeah,
lots of pears, Australia.
and they send them to they export them to the United States.
Oh, the other thing, we're talking about this pear thing, I get my thoughts right. 50% of the pears we try, or 60% we try to get in the fresh pack, which is the stores, and the other part we send to the canners. That's how, and the canners have different size grades that they like, and you're paid by the size.
And they still dry some too.
Oh, yeah.
Elsewhere,
Oh, yeah.
not here, but
Yeah, the what we call packing house calls are sent either to juice or dry yard. So, yeah, they try to do something with all of them, that's for
we
sure.
used to have dry yards all around here, around Lake County.
Oh, yes.
And now,
I
as
don't
far as
know.
I know, we don't have any.
Oh, yeah,
We
no, I guess not, they closed up out there.
do.
I guess we don't have any more dry yards here in Kelseyville, or Lake County, I should say.
You can see what's left of them, there are places.
Yeah, right. Let's see. Scully Packing has 2 sheds and course, they don't pack it any octopi anymore. Ken Barr has one.
He doesn't pack anymore this year, he quit packing.
That's what I understand. He quit
So what does
packing.
that mean? They just ship?
What's that? He will send it to some fresh pairs to Scully and then ship
Oh.
it. Then they'll send them straight cannery. The cannery will give buy all his pairs.
So these are these big trucks with the huge boxes of pears that we see on the highway?
Well, some of the pears that are in bins that you see on the highway from the Quercus Ranch are shipped into Sacramento packing over there at Quercus. But a lot of some of the other trucks have cannery fruit on them, and they're going over to the valley to the different cannery places. Most of the pears are picked piecework. They get paid by the bin. We pay the contractor by the ton. He pays the pickers by the bin. Early days they got, I think when I remember, it was $8 a bin. Now it's 22 they get. Quite a difference. And a good picker can pick between 8 and 10 bins a day. And they work.
That's working hard.
Yeah, they work hard, but they work from about 6 in the morning till 1. Because it gets too hot in the afternoon.
Is there much damage, Skip, from picking and packing to the pears? I mean, is that where the culls come from with the packing sheds?
Well, yeah, well, they can have off-shaped pears, you can have, go ahead.
I'm just, I don't want to interrupt.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Well, if they're damaged some way, that they aren't perfect, then they don't want to send them to the sheds. They bruise very easily. Even when you dump them in, try to be careful when you put them in the bin. Sometimes they get a little damaged, stem punctures and so forth. Usually we have about 10% baby food and culls. The percentage about, where you get 90% will be in the number ones. Yeah, $22 a bin. And a ton is about 2 bins. 2 bins. Maybe it's 10,000. 2,000. Yeah, a little 2,045.
Per bin?
Per 2 bins.
2 bins.
About, yeah.
And they pick between 8 and 10, that's a lot of picking.
Yeah.
Some of those pickers are really good, that have done it for years.
Yeah.
They know how to move the ladders around, they don't knock too many off.
Right.
It's really good.
They just fly up and down the ladders.
Yeah, I would imagine it's just like, you can hardly see their hands moving. I don't need a napkin, I'll take a couple of these.
I'll take one, Linda. Linda?
I'm coming.
Oh.
What are you, starving?
I just thought I would.
Everybody needs a cookie.
The opportunity.
No thanks.
Do you want one, Skip?
Oh, I'll have one later or something.
Right here.
Okay.
Skip, what happens to the branches that they cut off when they trim the trees?
If they're too big, which they're doing today, since we've finished pruning, they pick them up and burn them some.
They burn
The
them.
smaller stuff, why we can chop them up.
Oh, okay.
Why do you wait till spring to
Beg
prune?
your pardon?
Why do you wait till spring to prune?
Well, we just finished, we started in November.
Oh.
We didn't
just
get-
takes that
We didn't
long.
have as many pruners this
Got
year
it.
as we normally do, so we had to extend it. This is the first year I think I've ever had pears pruned when they were in bloom.
In bloom, yeah.
That's unusual.
Do you contract that out also?
No.
You hire
Well,
individual?
you can do that. We do have a contractor that will contract picking. Generally, I have the same fellows every year
I see.
if I'm able to, or my son. I don't run anything anymore, my son runs. But, they make average, they make about $20 to $30 an hour picking by piecework.
Oh.
You can't mechanically pick the pears, they're too delicate. They're easy to bruise.
Sure.
And we went,
Did you ever have any problem with people not going up the ladders to pick what's on the top?
oh, you always have a little bit of that trouble. But with a contractor, he just says, go back and pick them. He has control.
Well, the reason I ask is my son-in-law works at a vineyard and a pear orchard in Lakeport, and they have workers that are imported. They would not pick the pears that they couldn't walk along the bottom and pick. They wouldn't go up the ladders.
Oh, wow. They wouldn't last long.
Yeah.
They're not gonna make a lot of money.
Yeah, it's kind of hard because if you're picking by piecework, they're working to make the money.
Yeah.
So you're trying to, at the time, if you're trying to size pick the orchard some way, it's pretty hard to
I
keep
think
them
that's
from
why
picking
we
too
don't
many.
size pick much anymore.
Well, you don't, I think most of the farmers only pick once, you just hold them to the last. You can with the right pressure, and then just go to town and get them all. That's what you have to do nowadays.
Skip, how old were you when your dad started doing pears?
You want coffee?
Well, I was around the pears when I was 12, 13 years old. Yeah.
And
I
what,
worked on the Corcus Ranch.
Thank you.
I used to sell
Oh,
cloth when I
the
was
coffee good?
13 years old.
to the workers and stuff?
To the people that were in the packing houses.
Oh, uh-huh.
I worked, yeah, the packing house. And all of the crates where they sold the pears in were wood. You know, didn't have any cardboard like we have now.
Like these.
Like these here.
They're pretty heavy.
And you had your own label at one point.
Right there.
There it is.
That's the Rohner label, but every packing house had their own label. You never know, the grower doesn't know until after November what he's gonna get from the packing house. You deliver the pear, once you deliver the pears to the packing house, they have control of all the pears, how they handle them, and they grade them, and they give you a weight, and they give you later on in a week or so the grade that you got, and then they sell those pears, and they put them in cold storage, and they will stay in cold storage till November, and they keep selling out of there, and you get paid some of your, so you can pay some of your bills, but you never know for sure until December, or the end of, November or December, how much you're gonna get. So it's kind of a risky.
Being a pear grower.
It's risky, yeah.
That makes Christmas a iffy situation.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
I've kept pears at home in the refrigerator until after Christmas.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Of course, that's our good Lake County pears.
Yeah,
They
of
keep
course.
We had Filipino crews a couple of times. Then we had them from Mexico, most of them. And now we have mostly Mexicans. Some Filipinos, mostly Mexicans. It's a broken immigration system that we have right now. It's really up in the air. And I noticed reading some of the farm magazines, they're having a shortage of help even in the valley in some of the irrigated crops, you know, tomatoes. Well, they pick those, but beets, lettuce, where they have a lot of hand labor or shortage of pickers. The pickers, packers, sellers, and the buyers, and especially retailers, get all the money first. The grower gets what's left over.
I know my first husband said, as we were going through these earlier years, he said, well, if we have a good year, one out of three will be okay. We'll make it okay. But he figured that was fine, because you have one good year out of three, you could make a profit, and the rest of the time you maybe just made expenses if you were lucky, and I don't know. I always said if I hadn't been born and raised in this pear industry, I would have had enough sense to do something else.
I've heard you say that before.
Hope for return for years and years was 15 cents a pound, and we rarely got it. Now we are doing it better at 18 cents a pound or more. Most of all the bare fields around are from orchards pulled out after hard times. Lots converted to grapes. Most of the acres that are pulled now are grapes. Pest management is a big problem.
And an expensive problem.
And an expensive problem. Now they use, we always try to use as few chemicals as possible and use biological control puffers. They call them puffers. They put them up in the trees, and it's a pheromone that attracts the male
Insect.
yeah. The, not butterflies, but the
Moths.
The moth, I'm trying to say the moth. And then that cuts down the population so you don't get worms in the pears. It doesn't completely control it, but it helps it quite a bit.
Skip, have you seen the redwood tank sprayer that we have in the barn?
Yes,
Is that something that you would have used earlier?
I don't remember the wooden ones as much as I do. They had some metal ones at the time, and I can remember we had a pair of horses that pulled them, and they sprayed all the trees by hand years ago.
Wow.
So now we have speed sprayers and all of that new stuff. But 50 years, 60 years ago, probably there was sprayers. I'm sure they still were using some, but I don't remember seeing them. But I see some in different places sitting around with redwood tanks.
I can remember when I was a kid out in Big Valley, Henry Malden would come and spray, and he had a team. And he would come at night, and I just thought that was the most exciting thing I had ever seen. These lights were going, and the horses were tromping through, and oh, it was just awe-inspiring to me. I just was all eyes. It was quite exciting.
The beneficial bugs that we have are lacewings, ladybugs, and predator mites that work on some of the bad bugs that we have. We use now, in the early days, the pest people did all of the checking for us to see what bugs we had in the orchard. Now we have pest control advisors, and they give a report, and you pay for that. And they give you a report every week and tell you when you should spray and all that kind of stuff.
Is that some of those little containers you see hanging in there?
The puffers are the ones that are hanging in the
okay.
tree.
The puffers. And that's what tracks the male insect?
Right.
Okay.
Moth, yeah. They get confused with the female moths that are flying around.
Happens everywhere, doesn't it?
I'm always confused.
Brock Zoller is one of the fellows that does our pest control now.
The pear doctor.
Pear doctor.
Uh-huh.
He's been doing it for 35 years now.
Well,
He does a really good job.
But aren't the sprays that you used to use for pears, aren't they a lot safer than the ones they use for the grapes?
Well, now, yes, you have, yeah, we used to spray with DDT and arsenic lead and all that stuff. But I guess it's considered dangerous now. In those days, we didn't pay much attention. It didn't seem to bother anyone.
No, it seems that,
They have more protection, you have more regulations, more everything.
but how can you tell? Because they do all of their spraying at night. I think the
What do you
spray
mean,
that they use.
spray at night?
The vineyards, they all spray at night.
Well, I'm sure that they all have to wear, protective gear. We didn't
But
even,
what I'm saying is that the sprays that they use go into the ground and into the water and down eventually into Clear Lake.
You talking about the vineyards?
Yeah.
well, the nitrogen probably is the thing that you get most, because we use a minute amount of spray material compared to what we use in fertilizer. But the fertilizer does go eventually into the lake. And you get a lot of weed growth and that sort of thing.
But I think that they had the sprays that they used to use for the walnuts and for the pears, I think was not anywhere near as dangerous for the groundwater as the as the grapes.
I'm really not too familiar with the grape part of the deal. This is, here's the annual permits and reports for the spray. First you get a spray permit, then you get a pesticide use report required monthly, pesticide handler training records, field worker training records, heat stress illness training written program, service records and schedules for portable toilets, records to prove adequate CPR first aid training, ladder safety training, and equipment safety training, labor camp operation permit from the State Department of Housing, environmental health kitchen permit including certified food handler, certificate and water microbial testing, CHP motor carrier permit for pear hauling trucks for 3 weeks, agricultural hauler's exemption certificate for cable tie downs, ag diesel truck exemption from California Air Resources Board, which requires annual mileage and cargo reporting for 1 truck for 3 weeks, hazardous waste permit to store used engine oil until it is picked up, irrigation well water testing with records for each well, good agricultural practices training records, part of food safety program, ranch security training record, part of food safety program, ladder and picking bag sanitation records, also part of food safety, California irrigated lands watershed enrollment and payment by acre, California Farm Evaluation Survey for watershed program, California Nitrogen Management Plan for watershed program. That's how many permits we have.
Wow.
See, I'd use your saying for that.
And all of this safety stuff we pay for every block we have, they charge you $500.
And you get inspected and inspected and inspected all the time. just always been things.
They
I
don't-
told my daughter, I'm so glad that she took it over. There's no way I could have coped with that at this stage of the game.
Well, is that why Pear growers have wives to take care of?
They don't want any deer in the orchard.
Yeah,
No dogs
the new
in
dog
orchard,
thing,
no
yeah.
birds
Yeah.
pooping on their pears and all that stuff. So you just have to, you know, they can do their checks and we have to do what we have to do to get the pears off. That's it.
Crazy.
Have
So-
there been any new pear orchards planted in the county?
Yes, I think Brett Holdenreed has planted
Oh, did he?
part of, he had pulled half of one out, I see it's planted, I think he planted. I'm sure there will be some more planted. In the better land. A lot of the pears that were planted in the early days weren't on, you know, the best land, best pear ground in the world. But, I'm sure there'll be some more planted.
What makes good pear ground?
What makes good pear ground? Sandy loam. Adobe is pretty, adobe ground, it grows good pears also, but a little more sandy loam. Where the water will penetrate really well and they grow really fast.
Yeah, another question, don't the roots of the grapes go down like 20 feet? And
The grapes go, yeah.
Yeah, but how deep would the pears go?
Well, I've seen them go out 8 or 10 feet,
Okay, wow, all right,
but not near as like the grapes.
right,
Walnuts go way out.
oh, okay,
Yeah, they go. Pears not so.
yeah, okay.
How long does a pear orchard last? When do you have to replace it?
Well, the pears, you weren't here, some of our pear trees are 150 years old
Okay,
And still producing.
and still producing. And Carol's.
yeah.
They're not very pretty trees, but they're still producing nice pears.
So,
So,
We had pear decline, what, 20 or 30 years ago, and most of those were Japanese root, and finally got rid of those, and they started interplanting all the orchards. They were 30 feet, and they made them 15 by 15.
yeah.
The tonnage in the early days was maybe 8 or 10 tons average. Now, you can get average of 20 tons, and the better orchards get 25 tons to the acre.
That's per acre?
Yes, per acre. Are there any other questions?
How big does a pear orchard have to be profitable, given everything else?
Well, nowadays, you need at least 20 tons to the acre.
Uh-huh.
And the better orchard will get 25, or even better than that, some, to be profitable. Now you got, in the early days, I don't know, you had $200 or $300 an acre. Now you have to produce, now you have 5,000 an acre to produce.
But how many acres do you need to be a reasonable business?
Well, I'd say around 50. Better if you had 100 acres of good land and good pears.
Skip, you pull your water out of the water table,
Yes.
and have you had any problems with that?
Oh, yes. In 76, 77, we had a drought here about like we're having now. And I drilled 3 new wells at that time,
How deep do you have to go down?
around 200.
And do you have well water for your house also?
We do where we live,
Yeah.
but I'm hooked up to town water, but we don't use it. We're hooked up to it.
And you haven't had any trouble getting water out of that for your household?
Not really.
Yeah.
Are there any artesian wells in the Kelseyville area?
Artesian?
Yeah.
There used to be down at State Park were artesian wells for some time, but we don't have that
All of
anymore.
our wells in Scotts Valley are artesian.
Death Valley doesn't have very many pears anymore, does it? It just looks so sad. It's so different.
When,
Well, once you grow them and pick them, then, okay. How has what happens after that changed over the years? Were there lots more packing places than
Yes,
there
I-
are now?
Yes. There were, I had that. Yeah, there were,
I think you said there were close to 40 packing sheds? Or there were 20 and now there's 4? That was,
yes, there were,
it'll be a
years
test
ago,
for the
there were.
yeah, what do we
Nobody would-
remember?
I had that. There were about 75 to 100 growers,
Yeah,
Is it on the other page?
Yeah.
and now there are 12.
ah, yeah,
There were 4 packing sheds just in Findlay.
really, yeah. Were there cooperatives or were these
No.
get in business?
Well, 3 of them.
Yeah,
Originally, they were not co-ops, and then the co-ops got started,
Right,
like Lake County Fruit Exchange,
it was a co-op.
Kelseyville Packing Company, and Scotts Valley Fruit Exchange. Those were co-ops of growers.
But they had individuals in
before-
Upper Lake.
But before that, they were commercial people that took it over, ran it. That's why they formed the co-ops, and that worked fine as long as everybody co-opted. Then greed takes over, and you lose the cohesiveness of a co-op. So one by one, they're closing up.
They had the Dodd Orchards and at Lake Cove and Pacific Fruit were all in Findlay, Upper Lake, Sealy, Rohner, and Matosa, Blue Anchor, Kelseyville Packing, Mount Canocti Growers, and the Quercus Ranch in Kelseyville, Scotts Valley. I don't know just the one. Was there more than one in Scotts Valley Packing House? Do you remember?
I think there was a little private one. Well, we had Hut Foods come and pick up, but that wasn't a packing house.
Oh, the Straight Cannery or
Yeah.
something? Okay. You wanted to know what we did with them afterwards? Now when we send them to the packing house, we sign an agreement with the packing shed. And once we deliver the pears to the packing house, they're in charge of taking care of them and selling and for the best money they can get for the product we give them.
yeah, yeah.
And then you don't get your money until after November or December, after they do all the sales. They give you some advances so you can pay your growers, I mean your workers and so forth. But basically it's the end of December or November, early December, they make their last payment. That's how that works for us. I think they're all the same. The cannery, we try, as I said, to produce 50 to 60% of our pears for the fresh market. And the other part to the canneries. And they bargain with the canners for the price we're going to get. We have a bargaining association. Diane's daughter is on that committee. And they're good bargainers. They're tough. But anyway, the canners will take quite a bit of fruit. Last year they were short of pears, and they wanted the pears, so they paid a pretty good price to get
It's a good price last year.
You can't have fruit cocktail without the pear.
They vary the proportion though.
Yeah.
Whichever fruit they can get the cheapest, they put more of that in.
So looking back all the years, what are like some of your favorite parts of growing pears?
The favorite parts of growing pears?
November and December.
Getting it done.
Going hunting after it's all over.
You have to kind of like the ground in the pear business, so, growing the pears and so forth. It gets in your blood. That's the best part.
Does
Either that or
anybody,
you get out, huh?
Huh?
Either that or you get out of it, huh?
Oh, yeah, yeah, the kitchen's too hot, get out, huh?
I think you had a question over there.
Oh, yeah,
does anybody in Lake County grow organically now?
oh, yes,
Uh-huh.
there's two of them, Austin grows some. And I think Carpenter.
Are they being successful financially, do you think,
I
with
don't-
that?
I'm not sure about that.
Uh-huh. I'm sure
I
it's
don't know.
more expensive.
Yeah, they can pick them off the ground,
Uh-huh.
and somebody wants organic. But I really don't know. I think they get a little bit more money for them. But you know, they have worms in them, and so I'm not sure how that. I've never been involved with that, so I really don't know.
Organic worms.
A little extra protein, I've never heard anyone.
Oh, have we any more questions? No, I don't have one.
Okay, if you sell it to a canner's, it's just pears. There's no identification of where it comes from, it's just pears, right?
Well, no. You get pears from the Sacramento River.
Yeah,
I guess it is just pears to them, and they get cannery pears from us.
yeah,
And I think at one time we had a differential. Kelseyville or Big Valley got more money than the river. And then now it's
Raise better pears.
raised better pears. But now, as you say, that shouldn't have happened, but now it's all, we have a bargaining association and all of the different.
but fresh pears are identified,
Oh, yes.
yeah,
Oh, yes. Fresh pears, we sell them all over the United States
Yeah.
and Mexico and Canada.
but as Lake County pears, as a brand
Yes.
in from Lake County?
Yes, 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 Lake County pears on it.
Yeah.
You know, at the Pear Festival, how they do that pear tasting, and they have like 12 different kinds. Are those all grown in Lake County? You know how they had the red ones and the bombs.
Well, we
and
got
the,
red
and-
ones and Bosque and all of those
I
pears
think
are
it's
grown in
California
Lake County.
women in agriculture that do that, so I'm assuming they are
Yeah.
local.
Do you know, Carolyn?
They're not all
that
commercial.
Oh,
That could
maybe
be
some
the
of them are in
difference.
testing.
Reds, some of the
and that
reds
kind of thing.
are commercially grown here, and the Bosque, but not all that many. But some of the others,
And are the Bartlett Red and Bosque the three main that Lake County does? And
yes.
some of the Asians?
There are some Asians, but I think Greg Hansen has some Asian pears that
That's
he
right, because you can get them on his little roadside
Casino.
stand. Yeah,
roadside stand with
yeah.
Scully's packed some camise, and they have some camise.
What's
Scully's have some camise pears.
Camise.
Yeah, they have some camise, yeah. They're very
They're
delicate pears.
Very, yeah.
By the way, she's an ex-pear grower.
Are you?
I'm ex.
If I'm not telling it right, you correct me. Okay.
Well, Skip, were you born in Lake County?
Actually, no. I was born in St. Helena, and we lived a little in Berkeley, California, for a little bit before we came to Lake County.
When was that, when you came to Lake County?
1933 or 34.
I've heard different stories that during Prohibition that there was a lot of grapes here, and then the grapes were taken out. When you come here in the late 30s or so, was there as many pears as today, or was there more? Or when you came to the county?
Well, in the early days, we had as high as 80,000 tons of pears and about 75 to 100 growers. Now we have 40,000
40,000,
tons
yeah.
of pears, and there are 12 growers. So there was a little plot of pears all over the place, and there were some bigger ones also.
But they went to grapes.
They went to grapes. They pulled them out. Yeah. Most of them went to grapes.
And your dad worked on the Quercus Ranch first, and then started buying his own orchards.
He worked. Quercus Ranch was owned by Mrs. Gopsevich. The brother was Mr. Dodd, her brother. So he worked for both places. He managed both places. The Dodd Orchard one time and the Quercus Ranch the other. In the meantime, we started buying our own orchard. We had an 80-acre orchard in Upper Lake, and we had our own packing with our own label at that time, and that started.
And how old were you when you started having your own, separate from your dad's? Or did you just
After the service?
What's that?
When you came home from the service?
Yes,
Yeah.
in 1955 I started on my own.
And he maintained his, and you did your
Yeah,
own?
I did. Yeah.
And then eventually you took over his too?
Oh, yeah.
What's the most acreage you ever had?
Well, let's see, Carolyn and I had some together, and I still have about 50 or 60 acres, and then we had 80 acres in Upper Lake. But we didn't have the 20 at the time, so we had about 125 or 30, something like that.
Wow. A lot of work.
We had another ranch on Soda Bay Road, but we had sold the one in Upper Lake, and I bought a 40-acre piece in Big Valley there on Soda Bay Road, where the yellow house is. You played the events there, have you, Bill?
Yeah.
Rancho de la Fuente.
What's that?
Rancho de la Fuente.
Yes, sir. Rancho de la Fuente. There you go.
How many acres does a well handle?
Beg your pardon?
How many acres does one well?
It depends, you know, you can get 500 gallons an acre, you get 1,000 gallons an acre, you do pretty good. But basically, most of the ranches get 500 to 700 gallons a minute water. And you need about 25 or 30 gallons a minute if you're frost protecting. Spread your sprinklers out and use them that way all over the orchard. And I didn't tell you about, I did tell, I don't know what I told Don, we have the wind machines also. And years ago you used all the orchard heaters and all that stuff, and you picked them up in these boxes rather than bins. Are there any more questions? Come on, Kate.
Well, in the Santa Rosa paper today, there was an article about people complaining about the wind machines for grapes. Yeah. I don't know if you saw it, but have you had complaints about the noise of your wind machines?
Not really, I'll tell you.
Not yet, yeah.
Well, we had my father on one of the ranches that he had run, got one of the first wind machines in the county, and it was a great big engine, and they had to heat up the oil to get it going, and it just, you could hear it all over Kelseyville.
The generator probably for the.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes.
And the doctor told him the birth rate went up 50%.
Another thing for Planned Parenthood to complain about.
Yeah. You got any questions there?
No, I don't think of anything. Really.
All righty. You got something else, Don, that you can?
When it's too late, you know, then you always think of questions.
Oh, and I don't do this very often either.
We met a fellow who's a pear broker. Now, what does the broker do?
Sells your pears.
He sells them from the packing shed? Okay, so
He's an intermediary.
intermediary between the packing shed and
In the packing shed, they have a fellow that's on the telephone, talking to brokers or stores, but brokers that sell pears for you. You have to pay them a percentage.
When we first came to Lake County, which was not that long ago, about 5-6 years ago, tell them what you were advised.
well, I met Jim Bengard.
Oh, yeah,
And-
we know them well.
Yeah, for sure. And so I was talking with him, and I asked him, I said, well, I said, there's all these pears sitting on the ground, you know, and they look really good. I said, can I go out and pick up the pears off the ground because nobody's using them? He says, yeah, if you don't mind getting shot.
So we didn't do
So we
it. We learned.
We used to pick up the culls all the time. As kids, we'd have our bucket and we'd go pick
Sure.
culls. I think I got a penny a bucket or something.
Oh, is that right?
And
Well, they look really good
They
out
do.
there.
we'd take them home and eat them and cut out anything that wasn't good. And my mother canned them and
Did she?
all kinds of things.
We got 5 cents a box. We were
Yeah.
picking the pears, and that's the ones, they took them to the dry yard.
And in those earlier days, we kids, all the girls, would work in the cutting sheds for drying pears.
Oh.
That was
Yeah.
a good job for us.
Well, we had also a friend who had a daughter who was a high school age girl, and she went to work in the packing shed. She managed one day.
Oh.
Yeah, and that
She
was
was a
it.
little tiny thing.
Yeah, but that was it. One day in the packing shed. That was all she could do.
Oh, I packed for years.
It
Did
was,
you really?
Yeah, right. Well, you're not.
The way I got myself to college.
Wow.
Maybe girls aren't as tough as they used to be.
Kristen, you were on the show. Hello.
Yeah.
Not sorting or anything hard.
Picking up the bins.
Yeah, right.
I think that was her problem. She had trouble picking things up. She just wasn't
It
strong.
is hard work.
Yeah, it is.
They're working hard.
Really hard work.
Did you like working in the shed better than different than the orchards?
Well, today, no, I mean, it was cooler.
Oh,
I
I
mean,
see.
outside in
Yeah.
the sun.
Yeah.
My daughter Pam, she was a forklift driver in the orchard.
Oh, that's a good job.
And 1 year Gallo line paid $50 a bin for the grounders, and so we picked up 3 bins. We thought we were rolling in it.
Yeah, Caitlin, my granddaughter, she forklifts for Greg in the summertime in the orchard. She knows the business really well. And Kristen did also, didn't you?
Now, how about pear brandy? Where does that come from?
They make some over there at Kanata Growers.
Well, they make the sparkling pear.
And they make
Used
pear
to, and they
champagne.
also-
Yeah, but they do a brandy, huh?
They did some at one time. Now they do what, the champagne or
Sparkling brand, sparkling.
sparkling something or
Pear
other.
something. My kids all worked in a packing shed when they were in high school.
It was a good job for
It
kids.
was a good, it was a
Yeah,
good
sure.
job for high school kids. I don't know where
It
they
was just
work
kind of
now.
taken for granted that we all worked at, when we were old enough to go to the packing shed, then we can pack. Before that, we had to work at the dry yard, which was not as profitable. Packing was pretty good wages, and if you got fast enough, you could make it.
Well, it still
quite a
is,
bit.
is it not?
Well, I think so,
Yeah, I do too.
because that's a lot of handwork. And it depended on how fast you could do it. And of course, I was a big, strong girl, so I could lift those boxes off the packing stand and get it on the conveyor, and away it would go.
Yeah.
Get another box, pack it up, and shoot. It's good money.
Now, when I lived in Taiwan, we used to get California pears, and they were in little paper containers. Where is that done?
They do it in the back, they still do wrap. And now they even have special.
Little styrofoam kind of things.
Well, it was in a, it
Paper.
was a paper piece, it was like a really light little paper.
Yeah, that's what she's talking about,
Yeah.
wrapping.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now they have a specialty tray, what they call tray packs, and they have special,
Uh-huh.
little small, you know, you can put them in.
Like an egg crate.
Yeah, like an egg
Yeah.
carton,
Yeah, they were pretty pricey over there.
I bet.
Yeah. All fruit was.
Yeah, yes, it was, fresh fruit.
We average, what, 15 cents a pound? And now they sell them for what, $1 a pound? And
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm trying to read.
Yeah, the pear was probably over there was $1.
What?
Oh, I was trying to read this.
Oh,
box.
Marion
Marion.
Marion Fraser.
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 Oh.
That was
Pen were like
my
4 or
mother.
5 bucks.
Yeah,
Oh.
the apple was $5.
That was not the early years, it was early, but the original, we had Fred Merritt's, that was my grandfather's. And then my mother ran the ranch for a while, and my brother, and we had Marion Fraser. She also taught school. Art teacher, music. And I asked Skip if he didn't have some boxes that had Rohner on it. He didn't happen to have it handy, so he used my family's.
Okie dokie.
Thank you.
We appreciate it,
Yeah,
this is very interesting.